Is the unnamed tavern named Unnamed Tavern? Is Unnamed Tavern named Unnamed Tavern, or is it a tavern that's not been named?
Why not?
Okay.
Rooftop solar power. From time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
year during the heat of summer when this is from September, by the way, this article. This year during the heat of summer when temperatures in New York surpassed 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the 22, Jesus Christ. The 22 solar panels of the roof of my house were doing absolutely nothing. This is not something I learned until September, 4 months after my husband and I bought the house. So the house came with... Oh, I'm invisible. Hold on. Wait, hello, hi,
For
hello.
those that are not
Hi,
mentally
hello,
challenged,
Chesh, you there?
that's-
Knock, knock.
the 90 degrees Fahrenheit is 30 Celsius, or 32 Celsius.
So they bought the house with the solar panels already attached to it. So I bought the house with a purportedly functional leased solar system in upstate New York, months after logging into the website that inaccurately told us that the panels were working, months after we forked over $6,000 to prepay the remainder of the 20-year lease to the company supposed to be maintaining the solar panels, Spruce Power, which happens to be the largest privately held owner and operator of residential solar in America. A third-party technician dispatched to our house by Spruce in September blamed squirrels that chewed on some important wires. Spruce blamed the previous owners who they said fell behind on lease payments. In September, Spruce told us it had disconnected the system previously, but that did not explain why they'd taken our money to prepay the lease on the panels in June. The panels are still not working to full capacity. Made aware that this article was in the works, Spruce said in September that it will repay us for the 9 months the panels were not working. We're not alone.
Oh, you're a journalist? Okay. Let us pay you back.
Right. We're not alone. Obscured by the recent rush to sign up households for rooftop solar and speed up the electrification of America are those who already have solar panels on their roofs that do not work. Many were early adopters who did the right thing for the planet, installing solar panels before the expanded financial incentives that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act. Because the solar was more expensive in the 2010s, many entered into leases with solar companies to defray upfront costs, and many were left in a lurch when those companies went out of business. Often their solar leases were packaged and sold alongside thousands of others to private equity companies or other investors who were not incentivized to ensure years into the lease that the service was good or the panels even worked. So here's like a whole ass chart. So the number of complaints made about solar panels in the United States is increasing rapidly. From in 2018, 630 to 2023 at 5,331.
Yikes.
It is a big number.
Sounds like people are grifting in here.
Right. So
pretending to be
understand.
competent contractors and then just taking the money and just like bye.
So if you're looking at solar panels, understand that solar panels have a lifetime. They're not, you plug them in and infinitely you get free electricity. Understand as well that the resources going in to make solar panels can actually be quite carbon unfriendly. So if you think you're being carbon neutral, be sure to look at how solar panels are made, because you could actually be carbon negative just by installing solar panels. Understand as well that if you're entering into solar panel stuff, whether the company where you don't own the solar panels, you could get into problems where that company goes away or gets bought out by somebody else, and so solar panels are good, but bad practices exist. It's a really shame if you try to start, if you go to just one solar company, even have them inquire, your name gets on a list and you will get spammed like there's no tomorrow from legitimate companies as well as scammers.
Well, this article This article is pointing out that the issue is regulations of the companies that were providing the solar panels, as in they were not being regulated, as in everything was but like trying to catch up. And guess what gets caught in red tape? And guess who's catching whom in red tape when it comes to bringing a new technology forward? Oh, is it the old guard that doesn't want to lose control of their stranglehold on fucking everybody? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
like
solar panels have a very
That's why
important part of our energy, system.
Pushing these companies out of the business. They want to create a monopoly around this technology.
Yeah.
So that's why there are so many like big giants coming in and just buying the assets and just letting them rot.
If there are good solar panels out there, there are good solar companies. You got to do your homework and be careful, right? And if it's too good to be true, it probably is not what you should invest in. Right? Solar panels that build, for example, to charge ultracapacitors tend to be better. There are modern solar panel stuff that is more efficient, but oftentimes the solar panels, you have the problem of energy storage, or the manufacturing of such things can be done in places that employ child labor, that employ a lot of dirty energy, and that you might end up with a solar panel that does not reduce carbon, but increases the carbon load to be on how it's made or disposed.
Yeah, over the lifetime of the panel.
But they're good solar panels solar energy
also,
is an important part of our energy environment, just not the scammers.
And also, when you're going to lease any equipment, ask the person or the company who's leasing you the equipment to put it in the contract that they're going to do monthly or weekly maintenance depending on what they're leasing you.
Yes.
That's very important.
Now
that's very important.
That is important, although it also won't solve all the problems here, because one of the problems is that in this author's
that's what I'm saying.
case,
It's one part. It's
the people who had the lease before them had fallen behind on the lease, and in that case, you might expect the company to not send out the. Well, I mean, I have no reason to doubt.
I think so. That's kind of.
No, I mean, like,
that's kind of like
she was told that by the company, right? She didn't say
but
that.
I think that seems plausible. Like, you're selling your house, you might not want to keep paying your lease on your solar panels.
Sure.
I'm just saying, you
might be better off buying your solar panels.
And someone to have a look to make sure.
Can you guys please all stop talking at the same fucking time? You're driving me crazy. Go.
That's the point.
This article goes on to say that there are it's not just companies that are leasing, it is also companies that are selling. And it says that companies that sell rather than lease solar panels are unpopular too. Dozens of customers have filed complaints against a company called Pink Energy, which abruptly went out of business in September 2022 and filed for bankruptcy after allegedly selling defunct solar panels and misleading customers about their benefits. Even some of the biggest solar power companies in the US, including Sunrun, Tesla, and SunPower, have faced legal complaints about the sales practices, solar panels, and financing options at their companies or companies they've acquired. Yeah, Tesla. We're back to Elon Musk.
Wait, hold on. Daddy Space Jesus is doing a bad thing?
Yeah.
I find this very hard to believe. He is a genius futurist innovator who is definitely well equipped to run a social media company, and who will be getting us to Mars just next year, and who already delivered Cybertrucks a year ago. Kind of. Not at all.
And he will deliver us the Hyperloop trains also.
Quote,
yeah,
I get so many calls about solar, I could never take every case. I would be working forever, says Kevin some last name, a lawyer who represents consumers in cases against solar panel companies. Quote, you could occupy every state attorney general full-time just doing solar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the attorneys general in many states have sued companies that say targeted that they say targeted vulnerable populations and misrepresented the benefits of rooftop solar, but the attorneys general appear focused on emerging companies trying to sell new solar system door to door rather than the ostensibly servicing systems already in place. So basically this is a massive issue on something that should have worked, should have been fine, and then what was that one just said suddenly went bankrupt, abruptly went out of business?
So
Now
again,
that tells me there were bad actors who came in the industry and they just like muddied the waters and poisoned the waters. That's what happened. And why? Because the regulation and the people who look after the legislation, especially on the technology side, did not focus on it. They were so busy hyper focusing on reducing the carbon print and just like, oh yeah, that solar panels will do that for us. But yeah, moving on, the oil to Ukraine or from Russia. So yeah, and what happened? The bad actors have slipped in and just poisoned the whole well now. Congratulations again. That's it, right.
So solar panels and solar energy is a very important part of a healthy energy economy and healthy energy system. I think you would be better off if you're installing solar panels to own them rather than to lease them. If you lease them or rent them, insist on a clause that says if the company goes out of business or if the company gets sold, you acquire all the rights of the solar panels. Because the problem is you can get somebody who will install them. They may have customer service, but they get bought out because they're profitable by somebody else who doesn't care, right? So the notion, if you either own your solar panels and then use reputable contractors to service them and maintain them, and understand that solar panels have a lifetime. They're not infinite, plug them in, you get free energy. They're a life cycle that is required to be maintained.
I want to know why and how all these companies...
Just be careful.
I want to know why and how all these companies were abruptly going out of business. Like, to me, that is like a red flag. That is like, what the hell is going on?
Well,
I'll give you an example, Chesh. I'll give an example. So what happens is, like, in construction industry, these like people come in and you assign jobs to them to like around your house, like, build me an extra extension in a room, or do this something in my kitchen. They take the money and then they go AWOL, and then you are chasing them for the project to be completed. Something like that.
Well, I mean, Landon's got like a reasonable solution, and it's that you should be owning them instead of leasing them. But that poses the same problem that we ran into when we were talking about the news. We're talking about things that this is now limited access. That this is something only rich people get. So only rich people get to save money. Sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
So here's, from what I can glean, the rough sequence of events went like this. So the Inflation Reduction Act provided incentives, financial incentives for people to install solar panels on their houses, right? Residential solar panels, which meant that for these solar companies, it suddenly became far more profitable to make new sales than to simply hold on to the revenue stream from the leases of old sales. Because people are putting big down payments and whatnot, and the leases are mostly paying for things like, upkeep and service and whatnot. So it became more lucrative to get new people to install these than to keep up with all of the servicing. So they probably didn't expand their service department all that much. And then suddenly, when those incentives expired, because they were a limited time thing anyway, they found that they had overextended themselves in terms of sales, under-supported their support departments, and also had probably a bunch of loans they took out to do things like increase their stocks. By stocks, I don't mean like the stock market. I mean like the stock of merchandise that they have to move.
Yeah.
And things like that. And so they found themselves in a situation where they had very little to no liquidity and debts that they could not easily move. And so at that point, your only real option is bankruptcy and potentially just folding the company. And so the thing is, I think it's a combination of lack of foresight, because that's one of the things that, businesses are most notorious for, is an inability to look much farther than like the next fiscal year, combined with an incentive structure that when you don't think ahead, causes some problems. So basically, I think one of the big solutions is find a way to get it so business people have to look more than like a year or two ahead. I don't know how to do that, but it seems like that's a big part of the problem, is that once any kind of incentive structure gets set in place, it's going to be temporary. A whole bunch of companies start acting like it's just a permanent way things are going to go, and there's definitely going to be no changes in the market anytime soon.
Yeah, Vibrantly for 5 said, crazy idea. All new home roof angle and direction should be maximized for solar efficiency by law. Further south you go, the flatter the roof would be. You might run into some structural problems depending on where you go, but also, why wouldn't you just have all homes require a solar generator when they're being built in the first place, as well as potentially your southern facing wall, like not the roof but the wall, have algae in it, because that's a whole fucking thing that's going on right now too. I want an algae wall.
Please don't spoil that. Please don't spoil
in my house.
Like Landon said, there are places where that actually ends up becoming carbon negative, right? So, for instance, I live in a place where solar panels, even before the incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act came about, were hugely popular. Because, I mean, look, I live in southern Arizona. It's sunny like 300 days a year here.
Okay.
And
nice.
Yeah, like, it's ridiculous. I live in the 4th sunniest city on Earth by number of days of sunshine per year. So it makes a lot of sense, and it is very carbon negative in most cases for people around here to get solar panels. Even when they don't have an ideal facing for their house, it still usually makes sense. However, if you live in like Vancouver or Washington State, where you're lucky to get more than like 80 sunny days a year, and you're also much farther north where you're just getting less incident sunlight per unit area anyway, it might actually make more sense from an environmental standpoint for you to not get solar panels, given the fact that the manufacture of solar panels is very carbon intensive. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think it's just
then it is
either a countrywide or a worldwide declaration that everyone should just have solar panels.
Maybe I'm just stupid. Walk me through this, because maybe I'm just the dumb person in the room. Because, like, if you reduce carbon emissions of the making process, is the making process carbon heavy because of what they're made out of, or because of like the shipping them around, and or because of like just the manufacturing process?
I mean, both.
So all of the above. So if that gets
the
if
materials
we
themselves,
hook up 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, every block has solar panels. Those solar panels are making excess energy. That energy gets pumped into the system. That system is then able to power the plant. Then the plant that's building the solar panels is no longer negative. Right?
First of all, your home solar panels are not going to be sufficient to
not
power
as an individual, but no, of course not, but definitely not as an individual. But if we're talking a power grid that is being pumped full of every house in a city, especially in a place like Arizona,
depend on the city. Yeah, in Arizona that'll work, but if you're in
that's what she's saying. Yes, that's what she's saying. If they were able to do that, if there was a city that was able to
reduce
power
the
its
excess
own transmission grid, and so that means that
there are places where the idea would work.
Negative or zero.
Yeah, like in most places in Arizona, most people with solar panel are actually paid, or actually they get a reduction to their power bill or actually in some cases are directly paid by the power company for feeding energy back into the grid.
But then would that not, if we make if the plants that are building are focused and built in places that have the excess energy to do so, they would no longer be carbon negative.
That would reduce, if the construction happened nearby, it would reduce the transport cost or transport carbon
there's going to be transport
for getting them
costs.
to the end producer.
We know there's going to be transport.
It might actually end up increasing their production footprint for transporting the parts to the
I'm assuming transport is going to be a potential problem one way or another, because until we can turn transport trucks electric and also make sure that electricity is not carbon.
I thought Musk already made that happen.
We got another Musk problem on our hands.
Oh
That's
man,
going
he
to
told me
schmuck number
years
one.
ago that like the Tesla semi truck with could accelerate faster than a regular truck, even though no one cares about acceleration on a cargo truck.
I mean,
Would
obviously,
be out in
no.
fleets
Sounds
already.
like almost sounds like that guy who was like promising like trucks with like powered by what hydro cells? Sorry, what was it? Yeah, something like that.
So the thing is like I understand, and obviously there is no reason why we would ever rely on one source of power, right? There's no reason to only do solar. There's no reason to only do hydro. There's no reason to only do wind. There's no reason to only do carbon. There's also no reason to never use any carbon at all. We should absolutely still be using carbon because it's necessary in some processes. The point is to reduce the utilization of it in a way that makes it sustainable, right? And plateau thing. So I maybe it's just me, and I'm struggling to be like, okay, but if we can guarantee or we can reduce the carbon emissions in this way, would that not ultimately solve the problem? Because if you make Vibrantly's thing a reality, and let's say it needs tweaks, right? It's not a perfect plan, it's a suggestion. If we take the suggestion and we make some necessary adjustments to it to make it functional, then those houses would be pumping out enough power to put a dent in carbon, because now you've got every house that's being built from now until forever having a solar panel or mini grid required.
Okay, so that only works in certain areas, right? There are places where you're never going to get solar panels to become carbon positive. So in those places, it doesn't make sense. But as long as you restrict the places where because there is going to be a minimum amount of carbon at any given time that is going to cost to both manufacture and then later recycle or otherwise dispose of solar panels. You're not going to be able to get it down to zero. It's just not going to happen.
If it's enough, then we already agree that an amount of carbon is going to happen and is actually going to be necessary due to specific processes.
Right. So there will be places on Earth.
At what point?
Where there are places on Earth where the amount of carbon saved by the solar panel is going to be lower than the amount that was used in the manufacture of the solar panel. And in those places, if your concern is carbon emissions, it does not make sense to use solar panels there.
But not if we put it in, like, if we make the manufacturing plant in the right spot and we've adjusted for electric cars.
We plan and strategize properly if it's done the right way from the start.
The big cost for transportation is the raw material in most cases, right? It's almost never the transportation to the consumer. So the problem is less where you put the factory and less what it is that is required to be brought there. Because the thing is, like most things that are made nowadays, you need bits and pieces of material from all over the place, right? Like you need rare earth metals. Just the fact that you need rare earth metals to make these things means that you need a global transportation chain to make them at all.
Right.
Which means that the primary problem is not where you put the factory. That almost doesn't matter at all. You can put the factory on, as long as it's on land, it's going to be one of the least important factors. The most important factor is going to be the manufacturing itself. How much energy does that take? The transport, because for a very long time, transport is going to be carbon-based. We're not getting solar paneled shipping container ships.
Hydro cells.
Then what we're looking at is triangulating the most efficient places to put factories, right? At that point, you're just like, okay, well, if something needs to come from here, and now it's just a management problem. Now I may as well be playing like Oxygen Not Included and being like, okay, I'm playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. I have these things. Doot.
Yeah. And so the solution is you should encourage solar panels in places where you can be well assured that the carbon emissions are going to be negative for having extra solar panels there, which is not everywhere, but it is a lot of places.
Well, it also has to just be less an amount of what is being currently used, even if it's not positive. So,
right, that's what I mean by it's... Oh, sorry.
And a healthy energy economy or energy system has many modes because certain modes have benefits over other certain modes. So you want, you want nuclear, you want things relating to, things like, for example, geothermal, where you have that option. You want hydro, you want other things. So isn't that one energy system fixes everything? You want a
Right.
multimodal for the area that makes sense, right? Certain places don't make sense for geothermal because they don't have it. Certain things, solar is not a viable option. Wind is another case where you have these systems. We don't have a system that is intermittent like wind, in order to, because people's energy demand is not intermittent. You need to be able to store that energy and repurpose it, or reissue it later on. So that when it's not windy or it's not sun isn't shining, you can still supply energy. That's why you want a multimodal system and energy systems that, for example, the solar or wind might store energy into, so that when it's not raining or sunny or windy, it'll provide energy.
It's one of those things where, like, my struggle I'm having here is, like, if you have a mixture of multiple things, then the only real cost, like a carbon cost, that solar panels are going to have to equip them across the board is going to be a matter of whatever, like, equipment is required to be used, or breakdown that's where it requires
the raw
and there
materials.
is no the gathering of the raw materials that require some kind of carbon usage, like gas or whatever the fuck, to power your equipment, assuming that we can't move that equipment into another resource in the first place. Right? Like, am I wrong about this?
Right.
Like you're saying, if we can't optimize,
as long as I understand,
if we can't optimize it, then that would be the cost. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, as long as I understand what you're saying, that we need to optimize the production process, which sure.
Yes.
Then that will expand the range of viability for solar panels, but I don't think it's ever going to become worldwide.
Well, the thing is like, that's just
I have
a matter
something
of,
to
like,
share after Chesh
go ahead.
finishes.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you finish. No,
Okay, I'm just gonna read this.
Just
I'm just gonna read this super chat then. So we got one from two from Vibrantly that said wind is solar if you think about it. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Or nuclear if you think about it.
Yep.
And carbon. Carbon is also solar.
It's all
just
fusion.
Deferred solar.
Let's
All fusion.
Let's derail and talk about ITER shitter for the next 3 hours.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Well, ITER is a very important scientific demonstration of fusion, and a step towards adding fusion into the mix of a healthy.
Vibrant, I'm holding you to this. You threw a
shit. Look, you don't have any idea what you've done. All right, Maanyaa, go ahead. What did you have?
All right, so there's a international airport in Cochin in India that has world's first fully powered solar powered airport. So the Cochin International Airport has been a torchbearer from its inception on many accounts, including solar power project, which prompted many other airports to move the solar way. The company keeps a close watch on how its interventions affect society and the world around. CIL, that's the International Airport, has always strictly adhered to the ideas of cost effectiveness and sustainable development. And it won the Champions of the Earth Award instituted by the UN in 2018. Also, what is it? So it has 46,150 solar panels laid across 45 acres near cargo complex, and CIL's solar power plant is producing 50,000 to 60,000 units of electricity per day to be consumed for all its operational functions, which technically makes the airport's power neutral. Now, the airport operator have 8 plants near the premises of the airport, having a cumulative 8 plants having a cumulative capacity of 40 megawatts. More green initiatives are adding up. So that one airport is producing more than 8 put together. So I was like, this is something successful. So I wanted to share that.
That's really cool. And look, I am definitely in favor of expanding solar power in places where it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's.
I'm also strongly in favor of nuclear power.
Yeah, the thing is,
lag today, man.
There's a lot of there's not a lot of discussion around the most of the problems in the world are a matter of resource management, and money is one of those resource management issues. So money is not being used effectively because money is a resource that ought to be used and not hoarded by a handful of people. It ought to be utilized to make things better in general for everybody. And so, like, when you have issues like switching away from coal into something else, but still allowing coal to exist, and it turns into this big old geopolitical issue, and it's a thing where it's like, okay, but what is effective? Because the efficiency of it, you can go by the numbers, and you can say, okay, listen, we have X number of people that need X amount of power in X location, but to make this functional, we need X, Y, and Z. So we can kind of, there's going to be nuances that you could debate and say, well, it's better to put it here, or it's better to put it here for different reasons, but that is where the debate should be. And we're back to the same fucking problem with the news being bad at its job because it thinks its job is to make money, and that's not its job.
Yeah. Yeah.